What's up, everybody? Maine Fly Guys here. Gonna do a jig fly today called the All-American. I'm using some Risen Fly jig hooks. It's size 14, or nope, just kidding, size 16. If you haven't checked out Risen Fly hooks, you should really check them out. Here you see I got their barbless one. They're nice hooks, I gotta say, and they're pretty cheap. I'm using some tungsten slotted beads here. I'm using an oversized bead. These are 1/8 diameter, 1/8 inch diameter. They're really for size like 10, 12, and 14, but I like the big head kind of look. I'm using some sheer 14/0 gray thread to start, and some people put weights, you know, but what I do is I just slide a piece of weighted material up the slot so that it stays like I want it to, so that it stays down and it doesn't sort of interrupt. It also helps build a taper, so I just build it up a little bit, nothing crazy, but just a little bit, and I push it down. I try to keep it right on top. Okay, so now I'm going to work back and put my tag in. I want this to be straight, so I don't want it to flare down at all, so I want this to be straight. So here I'm just using some floss, some red floss. There's going to have a little red tag. I usually do it a little bit shorter than the body. I don't want it to be too long, so there we go, that's pretty good. The other good thing about putting the weight in to start is it's good for measurement purposes, so you can kind of line everything up. If you do it right around the half body. Okay, so there's my tail. Don't worry about how neat it is if you've gotten all these sort of little fibers taken care of. But next, I like to ribbit with two things. One, this is a pearl flashaboo in small. It's pretty thin, but I just lock that in, and then I use this wire. I'm using a blue wire. You can see the theme, why I call it the All-American, red, blue. This is the ultra wire, the size BR, so nice little color here. Very, very aesthetically pleasing to me, and hopefully to the fish. You want this, when you tie it in, to be right under your tinsel or your flash. So I've tied in my flash, and then right underneath it, on the bottom side of it, I'm going to tie in my blue wire. That is because when you go to wrap it, you're going to wrap your pearl flashaboo first, and then you're going to overlap it with the wire. Now this is going to, you want them to be right on the same path, so if you start one, then you can start the second one on the same path. If they're right on top of each other, it just doesn't look as neat, doesn't look as clean. And so now I'm just tapering my body just to make it a little easier. So I'm going to work to the front here. And work my way back and just keep doing that until I get a nice little body. So now I'm going to put on some dubbing for the body. I like to use a little wax here just so that it kind of stays tight, because the dubbing I'm about to use is pretty loose. But I make sure you leave a little bit of space. Don't work all the way back, because when you start to do your dubbing wraps, you probably won't be able to get your dubbing all the way tight to the fly. There will be a little bit of space. So I use that little bit of space so that I can work back to my fly before I start. So the dubbing that I'm using is red squirrel, natural red squirrel. Here it is. I make this and I harvest the squirrels every year. It's really makes things really great if you want to customize things. Like here I throw in some blue flash. That's very, very little amount of blue flash. But anyways, I don't want this to vary in size since my body's already tapered, so I'm just doing a cigar style where it's pretty much the same diameter the whole way through. So here you see I have just a little bit of space where there's no dubbing. That affords me the time to work back, and then I can start my wraps and just move forward. And there you go. That's what you want. It's a nice little taper. It's very subtle. You guys can kind of see it there. It's very, very subtle. After that, I'm going to take my tinsel, and I really like to do 1, 2, 3, and then finish on my 4th wrap. If the 4th wrap is visible, that's cool. If not, whatever. It's not too big of a deal. Okay, so there's my flash, and then I'm going to follow that same exact line with my blue wire. So we got 1, 2, 3. It's a little dark, a little bright for you guys, and then 4. Let's get that one a little better, and then 4. Again, if I can see, that's great. If not, whatever. So then just wrap in your wire, and then I use a little helicopter action, and just take your time, it'll come off. So next I have this red ice dub that I like to use for a lot of my flies, but it's very, very long. So what I do is I tear it up, and you only need a little amount for this part. We just want to do 1 full wrap with red dubbing. So here I got some leftover wax on my line. So you just want a short piece right here. I probably have maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches, and all we're gonna do is do 1 full wrap. And here I've put a little bit too much, but that's okay. So there I just have a little teeny bitty collar. I'd say you need less than 1 inch of dubbing material on your line to do a full wrap. But so next part, I am going to make a quick little dubbing loop up front here, and I am going to work back a little bit, and right there looks good. Move forward again. Again, put some wax on your dubbing loop, and this this dubbing loop that I have here, you guys can see it, this little loop here. I'm going to use red squirrel again, but a little bit differently. I take it from the center back. So here's my squirrel, and here's the sort of belly side. I take it from the center strip. So that center strip is where you want to take it from, and because it has a nice red hue. And so what I do is I put them in my clip, put my fibers in my clip here, open up my dubbing loop. If I could open it up, open up my dubbing loop and slide it on in. And there we go. So here I have my fibers into my dubbing loop, and they're kind of bunched a little bit. I like to cut, just put a little bit of tension on this. I like to cut the ends off because they're very bushy and they kind of make a mess, whereas if you just have the tips of the red squirrel, it doesn't make as much of a mess. So this will require some sharp scissors. Oopsies. No, I don't need that one. So it's going to be a very small brush, and I don't want it to be thick. I want it to be very, very sparse. So here you can see I'm just sort of twirling it slowly so you guys can see how sparse it is. But so again, nothing crazy. I just want it super, super sparse because I don't want this collar to be overwhelming. I don't want it to overwhelm the fly, so we got it wound up pretty good here. So as I go, I just kind of don't worry too much about the fibers. You can always push them back. But so I'm just going to kind of wrap it up, and when I get to my spot that I like, oops, got my thread up a little bit, I'm going to lock it in. And you can lock it in. Once you've locked it in, it doesn't look real great, but when you pull all the fibers back, make sure you get all of them, don't leave any stragglers. That's when it starts to take shape. So I'm going to cut my, oops, cut my loop, and I just showed you guys how I make these loops for this one, but typically I make a whole bunch of them. Okay, so here I'm gonna take, so I've got my dubbing loop done pretty well. It's looking how I kind of want it, and that's it. So I'm just gonna whip finish. And some people will use a brighter thread color to make sort of a hot spot here, and you can do that if you want, but I just use the thread I got or whatever. So okay, so I missed a few there, but here we go. Here's your fly, and before finishing I always take a little Velcro comb and I just do it really gently, just really gently on the top and the sides, and just makes it look a little more buggy. And so you are done. So what I do now is I just go through and sort of pick some fibers apart that I don't want here, like this little straggler. I'll just take it off. And you got a great little buggy pattern here. Fishes really well, fishes deep if you use a tungsten head, and works really well for trout, salmon, rainbows, browns, you know, whatever. The whole trout and salmon family, they work great. So here's your fly. Thanks for watching. If you got any questions, leave a comment below. Other than that, I'll see you guys later. Thanks.